In today's episode, how I ended up in IT. Power loss times 2. $500 mainboard DDR4 compatibility. Teacher in classroom not knowing how to deal with a water-damaged laptop. Before we get started, make sure to subscribe so you will never miss a video. So let's get started. How I ended up in IT. This was back in the year 2001, or maybe 2002. I was in 6th grade, which is why I'm vague on what you're aged 11 or 12. We had iMacs in the computer lab. I barely could operate it because my family had been PC since the Packard Bell my dad got from Radio Shack in 1993, which is one of the seminal moments in my life. One of the horrible things about those computers was the absolute horrible little half-sized hockey puck mice they had with only a single button. I don't need to tell Tales from Tech Support what it's like going from a standard mouse to that dang thing. On top of that, the school Macs themselves left me feeling very much like a PC guy in a Mac computer lab. Wait. Yeah, that's exactly what it was. Among other things, for that computer class, we had to save all of our work on floppy disks, which I also don't have to tell all you folks who have been in the industry. As long as you have that, storing anything important on a floppy is like writing something important on a slice of cheese with a dog around. It's a matter of when, not if, you lose everything on the diskette. So naturally, being the intelligent person I am, I didn't depend storing anything on the floppy. I turned it in on the floppy, but I didn't depend on it. So day one, ask if I can bring in my own mouse to use, because I really don't like the ones that the iMacs have. Well, I really don't like that because the mice are made specifically for the computers, and it probably won't work. Well, no, Mrs. B. The Universal Serial Bus was designed to be compatible with everything to replace the IBM PS2 port, which is 13 to 14 years old, as well as the Mac equivalent, which I don't know the name of, which is probably just as old. So really, a mouse is a mouse, but these really bother my hand, I explain. I basically dazzled her with techno babble. I still don't know the name of the old port that mice used to use on Macs before the USB. So every day to computer class, I brought my own mouse from home, and a USB splitter, as well as my very first, they had just come on the market, USB thumb drive. I even did the legwork and made sure it was formatted to FAT so it would be compatible with both Mac and PC. I show up to computer class on day 2 and plug in my mouse, the splitter, and the flash drive. Anyway, a week and I do my assignment for the day working out of the flash drive, and at the end of class I dump it to the floppy disk to turn it in. The next day, I get a failing grade on the assignment for not doing the assignment. Well, that's bullshit. *T, the floppy failed. These things lose data all the time and are entirely unreliable. I'll pull the file off my flash drive and print a copy right now, I tell her. She argues with me, accused me of just not doing it ECT. In the time she's scolding me, I bring up the assignment on the flash drive and bring it up on the computer. This assignment? You must have done that at home, she then goes off on another tirade. I copy it over onto the floppy again. The fact that floppies suck is not my problem, and it's not a reason to fail an assignment. You will find that everyone has these issues simply because floppies suck. If you properly stored them in a hard box, the problems could be reduced, but that's simply not reality when we have to carry them all around the school. I myself have a flash drive that I've been using for my assignments, and you probably never noticed, I explain to her. I show her the file, and she looks at my computer. There you all my classwork, even the stuff I wrote for other classes after finishing your assignments 5 minutes, and I explain to her. How'd you get that flash drive to work on the school's computers? I couldn't get mine to work, she replied. You probably just need to format the thumb drive to FAT32 instead of NTFS. FAT works on Mac, but NTFS is Windows specific. I don't know what any of that means. Of course. Take everything off the thumb drive, so I can set it up right for you, I reply. I completed the typing assignment for hour or however long class in all of 4 minutes. While everyone else is doing their assignments, I fixed her thumb drive to be cross-compatible with both her computer at school and her computer at home. Then I played some stupid education game for the rest of class. Something with a spaceman or something. There wasn't anywhere cool on the internet to visit. That's the moment that I realized that there's 10 kinds of people: those who can barely operate a computer, but know just enough to do everything they need it for, and people who can actually fix and work on computers themselves. I also learned that formal education means nothing on the subject. And yes, I went to tech school to learn networking, learning all those cool toys that I couldn't afford to buy, like Blade servers and all that. Power loss times 2. I was working as a developer/sysadmin, with my job de facto being internal tech support and making sure development, deployment and running of code went smooth, though I hesitate to call it CI/CD in the current implied meaning of the word. The server site relevant to this story was at the time undergoing construction work, and we frequently had to cut power to different server rooms. Hardly ever an issue, the UPSs would kick in, and for longer outages we brought external power. On one scheduled outage a late evening, I get a call about the UPS in the server room failing to deliver any power, and all equipment in the room had some unexpected downtime. It actually brought the bulk of the company down with it because of the network layout. Despite this, I and the on-site technician could get most of the functionality back up and running within 15 minutes, and all of it except an old server running development and test VMs was running, error checked and functionality tested within 45 minutes. Somewhat of a feat considering the technical debt that site had. I figured the test server could wait until next day, and didn't bother to check it after booting it. No company crucial service was running on it. No one except me was going to work on it that week. Some of the services on it should already have started together with the machine, and for the rest I would just need to log on and start them manually. Besides, it had been without power during another UPS failure some 6 months prior without any issues getting it up and running. Next day I log on to the test server. No VM on it is running. Very strange. At least some of them should have started automatically. Check logs, they have a handful of messages saying that the processor model isn't supported and the VMs failed to start. Yet saying on the next logged row that the processor is supported. Hours of troubleshooting later, I have read all relevant documentation I could find, read all relevant forum/bug report threads I could find with Google. It was like had verified no surprise updates had been installed, had went through all available backups for meaningful changes and checked for hardware failures. All hardware worked. I couldn't see any setting or configuration on the server that had changed from before the crash. This wasn't good. Sure, the server wasn't required to keep the business running, but it was part of some CI/CD flows, and had test servers we ran demos from. If I couldn't fix it within the week, we would risk having to postpone code deployment and customer demos. My stress level approached 11 as my plan for the week derailed. Out of the blue, my boss gave me a number to call some friend of his. The friend was initially just as bamboozled as I was, but later said that one of the warnings could be a side effect related to a BIOS setting on some server motherboards. Then it clicked for us: the motherboard battery had drained and the BIOS reset to factory defaults. A battery change and an obscure BIOS checkbox later, the VMs are up and running as if nothing had ever happened. Never found out why the UPS never kicked in, but I later got the warning saying it had started to deliver power when planned outage started. $500 mainboard DDR4 compatibility. So I recently sold my used Gigabyte Z170X Gaming G1 motherboard on eBay and shipped it to Sweden. The buyer contacted me a few days later that the motherboard was defective. He was not getting a picture through either the onboard GPU or his external GPU. The error message, error 23, allowed me to narrow it down to a problem with the RAM. In addition to the usual questions about whether the memory is properly seated, and he has already reset the CMOS, which he has done everything, I read through the manual of the motherboard. On the product page, I found a compatibility list for the RAM and sent it to him and asked if his memory is listed there. He was using a HyperX Fury 3600 DDR4 memory which was not listed. He was able to borrow a different stick and boot with it. That was the mistake: this branded memory is not compatible with a $500 motherboard. Hours wasted on troubleshooting for that. This is just a short story, but I was fascinated that compatibility problems are still around those days. Teacher in classroom not knowing how to deal with a water-damaged laptop. This was a couple of hours ago at the time of posting. I was in a classroom at this time. Let's call the teacher Jane and the student John. I wasn't looking at the time, but I think that John might have tilted an open water bottle. I immediately see it as I'm walking around the room and rush to shut down the wet laptop, and to get all of my tissues, yes, tissues, to clean the thing. As I'm rushing there, Jane says to turn on the wet laptop. Me, sigh, you wouldn't want a sky-high replacement bill, right, Jane? Jane, just turn it on. Me, no, that could probably kill the motherboard and the whole laptop as a whole. Jane, oh, that's like a 0.1% chance of happening, okay? Me, no, more like a 65% chance right now. That's why I turned the laptop off. We cleaned the laptop the best we could, and we turned it on. I had to plug the laptop in, but it did work. Jane, I told you to. Me, it was because we cleaned the laptop, Jane. Jane, fine.